Ladies, gentlemen, and my often forgotten, but certainly not by me, chaotic crossbows, welcome to the channel, and welcome to my Art Glacor guide, Range Edition. In this guide, I'll be covering the worn equipment and gear used, I'll go over the special attacks that Glacor has, and I'll be going over some live kills with some commentary to show exactly how I do them. This guide will also be from the perspective of my personal presets and what I use, as well as a kind of budget-friendly version of my presets, so that way it can be shown that you don't need the best gear to be doing this boss, you just need to kind of press the right buttons at the right time. Without further delay though, let's go ahead and get into this guide. Alrighty, so here are two example presets I have. The one on the right is my personal preset that I've been testing for the past week or so. This does include the new update that came in, the God arrows from God Wars 3. I have been playing with them, however they're pretty expensive to use right now. I'll go over them separately a little bit later and how I use them and what my thoughts are behind them. However, I have been playing with them. They are pretty fun. On the left is the kind of budget-friendly version, and yes, the elephant to the room, I did just bring my a roaming switch up there. It is an offhand blight. It does not need to be an offhand blight. Your offhand's funny enough being flanking or roaming or lunging or any of those kind of switch perks that you would have in the offhand slot. The weapon tier does not, it virtually does not matter on the switch itself in terms of damage output with the ability that you're using. So if you're just using a glaive or using an offhand ascension or, you know, like a T8, some other offhand with range, it's not going to make too much difference on your Grickos at all. I think it's maybe 0.3, 0.5% or something like that. It's not a whole lot. The rest of the preset, though, as you can see, it's actually rather budget friendly. I forgot how cheap tier 90 Serenic is compared to Elite Serenic. I think it's only 35 mil for the entire Serenic set, which is honestly amazing. I'm glad that there is that budget friendly of a gear option that does, you know, that is tier 90 armor. The rest of it, there are chaotic crossbows there. I went ahead and used chaotic crossbows as more of an example. I know a lot of people in game are running around with tier 90 Serenic, Ascensions, and then on the Ascensions they have Precise 6 Aftershock 1 on the main hand, and Roaming 4 equal 2 on the offhand, and they have a Gricko with a Debo EOF. So, to kind of just make it easier on myself as far as purchasing equipment and whatnot, to keep it kind of cheap, I went ahead and just used Chaotix. If you have Ascensions, more power to you. And this preset, I did end up using the T95 Prayer as well. You'll see later on in the example kills. But the EOF is just a Debo EOF. I went ahead and put the Archers, or I believe it's Stalker's Ring there. I went ahead and put that there just because I know it's a cheaper option. However, if you have a Reaver's Ring, go ahead and put that there. It will help out. And then Hydrix Bolts are there just because they're very useful for the extra adrenaline they give. Specifically, when all you have is a Debo, it's really nice to get some big boy Hydrix procs and put out a few more Debos during a Death Swiftness. Scripture of When is virtually cost-free at this boss. If you're doing streaks from 0 to 500 or 0 to 250 even, or what I would recommend is 0 to 1k, you'll get so many pages from doing this boss that the cost is basically free for Scripture of When. And if you have something, you know, cheaper in the pocket slot, say you did some ports and you wanted to use some, what are they, Cruelty Scrims, I believe? You could use those until you get a Scripture of When, and Scripture of When I'm pretty sure is better damage than the Port Scrim, even if it's a superior one. But you could easily just do this boss to get until you get a Scripture as a drop, or just buy one off the GE. I believe they're 110 to 130 mil at time of recording, which is May 11th, 2022. And that's about it for the budget preset. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory. It's just standard food being blue blubbers and brews. Adrenaline renewals are just, you know, they're pretty simple to get. You just need the herb level for them. Vuln Bombs and Spiritual Prayers. The budget preset does use Ripper Demon. However, if you are struggling a lot at this boss, you could sub out for a Blood Reaver, and it will help out quite a bit and still put out a decent amount of damage. I'll kind of go over the Blood Reaver tactics in the familiar section of this video, but it is something to note. The offhand defender, by the way, the tier 80 defender, I should say, that is just a planted feet swap that also doubles as a shield, so when doing reses or reflex or stuff, it just saves an inventory spot. And in the budget, I went ahead and put the T90 shield in the budget preset just in case that's what people wanted to use instead. It's just mainly up to you. There's a lot of options here with Glacor that you can kind of plug in and pick and choose what you have and don't have, and you'll still be able to get kills just fine. Moving over to my personal preset now, the one on the right. This is a preset I put together for dealing with the latter half of streaks being anywhere from about 1200% in rage and up when I'm doing a kind of a big streak. If I'm really pushing to try and get a core instead of resetting, I'm pretty stubborn and I will honestly push all the way to 200 KS if I have to try and get a unique. It's not the best strategy for efficient farming of the boss, but it's what I find most enjoyable, so I kind of send it anyways. And this preset assumes Blood Reaver, and it is using Bic arrows, which increase poison damage as stacks go up with each arrow hit. And in combo with Blood Reaver, I found it's a kind of brain-dead version of this for this boss, where you have Blood Reaver and Vamp Aura on, so you're constantly taking heals from the Vamp Aura, and then you don't bother with an an ECB EOF, that's the one I was looking for. And so if you're constantly soul split flicking, plus you have the Vamp Aura, it triggers the effect of the Blood Reaver a lot more often, and it synergizes very nicely with the extra weapon poison that you're doing from getting a bunch of Bic arrows out and getting that to the maximum stacks, which is 200 stacks or 400 hits on the boss. So it is expensive, it takes a while to build up, and I don't recommend it for anything kind of below the 11 to 1200% in rage, just because by the time you get all of those stacks built up and it really starts coming to life, the boss is kind of dead at that point if you go lower than that. So honestly, it's not worthwhile. And I went ahead and used a full scripture just because I was already getting the heals that I needed anyway. I wasn't running into any food usage problems. And it's just a nice way to get a bit of extra damage out, being that if you're not using the other arrows, you're not really running into damage cap issues, so Grim isn't going to be too worthwhile. Other than that, though, it's just a SGB EOF, that's the one that's worn in yellow, a Debo EOF, and the third one is just one I brought kind of for funsies. I haven't really played with it too much, but it is a Decimation EOF. I'm not really sure why it's in this preset. I was going to play with it a bit, but then I realized it's really hard to use for something like Incense Shot on the minions, and it's not really worthwhile at all. So honestly, don't really need to bring it. Normally what would be there is my ECB EOF. However, on the high end rage preset, which this one is, I don't bring ECB EOF just because I use the healing instead. Just makes life a bit easier. Other than that, though, just a bunch of spirituals. My physical SGB is there just for getting arrow stacks out. You can use a Hex Hunter here, and I did play with Hex Hunter with full arrows, and it was a lot of fun. Full arrows being that they give 15% damage increase for a 10% accuracy hit. However, accuracy at this boss is not an issue at all, so you can go ahead and use those to your heart's content. I would not use Hex Hunter with Bic arrows, however, because the way poison damage interacts with Hex weapons is that it uses the T80 figure of Hex weapons and doesn't factor in the percentage damage increase that they offer. Because technically a Hex Hunter is a tier 80 weapon that has a damage and accuracy percent increase to make it like a T96.5 or a T97 weapon, but any other hits like weapon poison or other things of the sort, they get factored in and calculated based off of the tier 80 number rather than a tier 92 or the T97 that they're supposed to be. So if you're going to use Bic arrows, Would not recommend using the Hex Hunter, but for lower in rage, it's definitely fun to use if you have it laying around. If you don't want to use arrows at all, I understand why. They're very, very expensive right now, being that they're the same cost, if not more, than a Grim per hour. So hopefully some updates come through in the future. These are very new, the production is very new, and costs seem to be going down every day. However, they're still expensive to use, so I understand why not. Before the arrow update came out, I honestly just ran around with blights. I did bring my ECB during the pillar attack when I would go all the way to the left side of the encounter, just so I wouldn't run into problems of trying to use an ability if I'm one tile out of distance and my character running into the beam trying to just get an ability off. So I would bring my ECB just for that. But other than that, you could just use blights and Hydrix bolts and you'll do just fine here. Anything else in the gear really isn't too really noteworthy. Just the final recap is, you're using Blood Reaver, I would use full Scripture with a Vamp Aura just to get off those extra heals and make it much more simple. It's a really relaxing method. And on lower in rage, I would use the Grim with full arrows, and you could use a Hex Hunter if you want, but I just end up using the SGB. Alrighty, so taking a look at the relics that I use when using range at Glacor, or honestly range anywhere. This is pretty much my range relic setup. I use Death Ward, Conservation of Energy, and Fury the Small. Death Ward, it just makes ECBing at any place nicer, being that if you happen to fall a little bit low on HP and you're trying to get some ECB damage out, the reduction there can help you survive a couple more hits before you have to eat food, and it makes ECB usage a lot nicer, in my opinion. Conservation of Energy, I know a lot of people like to argue back and forth between the 110% and Conservation of Energy. Personally, I just use Conservation of Energy. I find it much easier to use. Plus, it makes the adren cost of Deadshot much nicer. However, if you like using the 110 and that's what you've been using this whole time for range, go ahead. I believe it's Heightened Senses is the name. Yeah, Heightened Senses is the one that is the 110% adrenaline relic. And Fury the Small is there. Honestly, if you don't have 120 archaeology and you only have 550 relic power, you could honestly drop Fury of the Small with... I know a lot of the people in the budget category aren't going to have 120 archaeology, so I would say drop Fury of the Small and replace it with something like Font of Life or Shadow's Grace if you don't have mobile on your gear. And the reasoning behind this is, if you're camping Hydrix bolts like in the preset I showed before, adren's not going to be an issue. You'll be having more adren than you know what to do with. In the 1% on basics, while it is nice, it is very nice to have, it's not going to be the biggest difference in the world as far as rotations are concerned. And at Glacor, I would personally prefer having the damage reduction of hits rather than the slight adren gain that Fury of the Small can give. I know a lot of people might disagree with that, but that is my personal recommendation if you don't have full relic power. But if you do, go ahead and send these 3 relics and you'll be on your way. I know a lot of people on the top end will also say that it's better to use Zerk Fury in Font of Life or Zerk Fury in Shadow's Grace because of the damage output. However, Glacor is more of just a for fun boss for me. I'm not trying to spam out, the top efficient kills per hour at this boss, so this is just what I use and it works for me. Alrighty, so for this section of the video, I'm just going to be speaking about the special attacks that Glacor does and kind of how they all work and whatnot, and kind of how the rotation of specials work. So the 5 special attacks Glacor can do is the Focus, or the prayer-flicking one. It says in the center on some message, the Art Glacor focuses on the attacks and they're going to do more damage or something like that. Some people call them Frenzy, or I forget what the official term is, but I just call it the Focus, and it's just a prayer flicking attack. It's all you have to do is flick between the 3 prayers. You can soul split flick pretty easily through this. The confusing part about this one is the mage and the range animation-wise, have a similar attack. However, the range one, you'll see a green cloud appear next to like the arm of Glacor. It's like a little particle effect, or it's kind of quite a big particle effect, and it goes up at a slightly different angle than the magic one. The magic one, he just raises his arm up like a standard attack and just sends it down on you. And then the melee swipe is the most predictable, being that Glacor will swipe his entire arm. He'll swipe his entire arm across the stage and just deal with it that way. So you just prey flick between the three, and you're off to the races on that one. The arms is just a DPS check. I think it's 35,000 damage, and I will use this usually as a place to start up a Death Swiftness, or kind of just, you know, it's one of the points where I will start a Death Swift rotation. However, it just depends on at what point in the kill it is and what attacks have happened already. But just a simple DPS check where you have to kill the arm, and then obviously it regenerates afterwards, but you have to kill the arm before the ice hits or the magic hits inside the little area that you're confined to, before that damage stacks up and kills you. It's a progressive amount of damage, starting from like quite literally ones and twos, but then it kind of does a exponential curve and goes right up real quick. And, you know, after I think it's 20 or 25 seconds, it'll start hitting like 3 to 4K. So obviously you want to do the damage pretty quickly, but a Debo and like a Gricko will kill the arm mostly. You know, just, it's not too much to worry about. The next one is the Pillars, which is just a simple movement. You'll see in the live segment later is my exact movement, but in describing it real quick, usually when the icicles are coming over from the east, I will move along the south wall, or the one wall closest to Glacor, and run all the way to the west. And then I'll kind of surge once the first pillar spawns. And then as that one starts, it's random where it spawns, but usually it spawns far enough away from you to where you can then, hugging the west wall, run north, and then bladed dive over to the northeast corner of that area that you're in. When you're on that side during the pillars, you're completely cut off from attacking Glacor, so it's just focusing purely on player movement. Then after that, I walk one tile to the east once those icicles on the ground clear up and you're able to move again. I'll use an ability to on Glacor, and then I'll surge along the northern wall to the east and just go from there and wait for the pillar to kind of track. There's a specific part that I use, and I'll show it off later in the example kills to know where I am. It's basically the max attack range of crossbows, is how far I stand away from the target. And then once that second beam that spawns gets close enough to me, then I just run south and then in towards the boss. And I follow that same movement pattern pretty much every single time, and it always works. So that's how I deal with that. The cannon, as it's commonly referred to, there's two strats for this. You either devotion the 3 magic hits, or you can do a reflect and res strat. I usually just devotion this. I'm pretty lazy about this attack. I don't like saving devotion for other parts of the fight. On most streaks, you shouldn't have to worry about saving devotion for like the focus or frenzy attack or anything like that. You shouldn't need devotion for any part of the fight, so I just use it on the cannon. However, if you want to get some free HP and, you know, or you're low or whatever, you can easily res the third hit of it. It is 3 one-tick attacks in a row. So you would press res and remove your prayer as you see the hit of the second attack, and then the third one you'll res and get to full HP. If you do absolutely nothing, I'm pretty sure these hits hit you for max HP or something close. Like, they hit you for a lot of damage if you just sit there with magic prey and just do nothing. Actually, no, it's not max HP. That's if you have prayer off, you can get one shot. But if you have prayer on, it's like 4900s, 3 of them in a row, 1 tick each. So reflect will obviously cut that in half, so you're taking 2500s. My bad on that one. Or you can just devotion it like I do. And then the last special attack is the minion special attack, and all I do is just toss on some chins and just toss a snapshot or a debo or a couple bleeds in a snap or a rapid, or just I chin the 4 together, and then I go back to using my main weapons on the 5th one if it's above 250%. If it's below 250%, the 5th minion never spawns. The big boy of the group, he never shows up. And they're pretty simple minions. The only thing to watch out for is if you get the minion special after a frenzy or a focus attack, sometimes the animation of the minion spawning will override the auto attack animation of Glacor, and you might have to pay a bit more attention there just to see and kind of guess which one it was that he was doing, so you hit the right prey flick. However, that's just something that comes with experience of doing the boss. Now, speaking how the special attacks work, so they work in a block of 5, meaning that every 5 special attacks, the list resets and it can start randomly on any one. There is no set order to special attacks at this boss, but say it goes and uses arms first as its first special attack, it has to go through all the other special attacks before it can use arms again. Now, this can lead to some situations where, say, it ends on a cannon or it ends on a minions or any of the special attacks. It can start the next set of 5 with that same special attack. So that's why you'll see sometimes Glacor will do back-to-back. It's because it happens to line up on the 5th attack of the previous set and the 1st attack of the current set, if that makes sense. So just some quick information there on the order of special attacks and how that works. Alright, so now we're going to be moving into the live segment here, or the live kills with commentary segment, whatever you want to call this. And I have the budget preset loaded up and ready to go. In the upper left-hand corner, you will see the usual keyboard cam, and as well as the program I use to show inputs for what buttons I'm pressing and whatnot. And just again, real quick, this is just a Kuroming swap. The offhand weapon does not matter too much in terms of damage. It's virtually the same if it was an Ascension, or if it was Chaotic, or a Glaive, or anything. It really doesn't matter. The main thing that Blights do is a bolt saving thing, but honestly, it doesn't make a whole lot of a difference, and in terms of damage, it makes none. But we'll go ahead and get some adrenaline here and aura. I'm just gonna pop something simple like dark magic. Using the tier 95 prayer just as an example here, and I happen to be on a streak, so I think this kill is gonna be around 1200%, so not too big of a deal. I go here and I immediately surge in on this tile. Totally messed up my rotation, but you know, going right into a DPS check, so it doesn't matter too much. Here, I'm just going to kill this as fast as possible. Got a book proc, which is kind of nice. And I do like to use target cycle a lot here to switch between things. Just go for a debo. We'll see what we get next. Okay, it's a focus attack, so we're just going to be prey flicking per usual and doing as much damage as possible. Let's go for a res to keep things simple. Get a dead shot. It's 1185, not quite 1200, but this is more just an example. Looks like we're going into a cannon next. I'll just run over here to the side. I'll save my death swiftness for after this. And here I'm just going to be kind of lazy and I'll hit devotion, anticipate, and then just start building. If you're standing on this tile when you start a death swiftness here, you can stand in the center just fine. It works for either side of the cannon as long as you hug the wall when you do it. you'll be able to stand back in the center. Some minions here, so I'll just put a book rock there. I'll toss a snapshot anyway. Trick of this guy for some adrenaline. Attendees because I can. Res here, and we're off to the races again. Decided to wait for my snapshot, and I'll hit a snapshot into a Debo. Going into pillars. And after this, the special attack order will reset and it'll start a new block of 5. So, over to this corner. Bladed dive over here and wait. It's a couple abilities, and then surge along this wall. And then I usually use this little, like, pillar type thing as a guide on where to stand. Go for a res here. And then into another Death Swift. This time we have A-Pot. So. Go ahead and get some Thrushes out. Also just noticed my spirituals run bound. Should have hit a Debo a little bit earlier so the Greco could have given a Dren, but not too big of an issue. And it looks like I'd go in to do a DPS check. Just kill this real quick. Happened to line up on our Snap Rapid, so that's kind of nice. Back over. Also Vuln Bomb early again because I'm pretty forgetful about Vuln Bombs. And we'll go ahead and hit a Dead Shot. I like to use Dead Shot in between Death Swiftness rotations. Looks like we'll be getting a cannon here. Oh, it appears I forgot to load my Ripper up with scroll. That's not good. It won't matter a whole lot as far as the kill is concerned, but, you know. Again, I just like to use Devotion. If I get back-to-back, I'll Devotion into a Reflect and Res type situation. Here we got a nice setup, and I'm actually going to Debo here because it'll hit the 5th one here. If it spawns over in this area, you can tag the corner, this corner minion, and it'll hit the big guy. It was a little bit risky there, but so I'll split this back. Go for a res. Didn't get it, not a big deal. I'm playing a little risky here. But I know it's a big soul split period coming up, so I'm not exactly worried. I would not advise you playing it this risky. Feel free to eat food as you please, but I'm just stingy. Or stubborn, I should say. And no reses? Come on, there we go. Now I can... Typically on this preset, I like to go for 2 snaps, 2 rapids, attendees, a couple debos, whatever I can really fit in. Here, I'll Debo. Go for a Greco to hopefully get some Dren. The cannon, so we'll hit Devotion. Greco into another Snap Rapid. And we get another Debo off before. Although it's kind of poorly timed because of the minions. Toss a couple bleeds on, and we happen to get enough Adren back, so we'll just toss another. Obviously, you don't need Greco to do this boss. Kills will be slower, but you could easily do it without. And this boss happens to be really good money, so you probably could get money for a Greco rather quickly. And for this part, I always like to run to this wall and then kind of run north here. And then I wait till about the last second, just so that pillar doesn't come and screw me over while I'm waiting for the icicles to appear. But kind of the same movement pattern, and just avoid the pillars accordingly. Another DPS check, use a rapid. And then just because we're close to getting the kill, I'll just go ahead and debo. EC back on. I'm going to go ahead and get some bleeds going, and then hit a dead shot. Go for something like a rapid fire. Oh, we got minions. Kind of typical of this boss. Minions come out at the worst time, whether you just hit a dead shot or an SGB or something, you know. It happens, but deal with it accordingly. Look, we got a nice little Wen proc there. Hit Debo and click these. When you click those, wait until the big boy is dead, because it will matter. If you click the orbs of the minions and the big guy is still alive, they'll only do like 50 damage. But if they're all dead and you click them, then it'll do 2,500. There's like 2,450 per hit, and so it's a free 10k damage, which is kind of nice. See what we get. Some ceramic scales, not bad for a streak so far. But as you can tell at this boss, it's mostly just being consistent and mindful of your prayer flicks, going for reses when you need to. I wouldn't recommend being as stubborn about reses and not eating food as I am. And if you remember Ripper Scrolls, obviously you won't be getting, you know, extremely long kills at like 7 minutes. And for this preset, it can go very far. I could see this preset working at 1,500, maybe even 2k. I could see this preset getting a 2k kill in rage-wise. But by that time, if you're just streaking and just pushing, I would push and rage through streaking just so you get more practice at the boss, and you're making money at that same time, so that's kind of how I would do it. And other than that, it's just be consistent, be mindful of your reses, and just kind of keep your rotations and kind of improv the boss. And the more experience you build at this boss, the better off you're going to be. But let's go ahead and move into the advanced preset. Alrighty, so now it's time for the live commentary of a live kill in my usual preset of what you'll probably find me using just about any time I'm streaming this boss, which as of recent has been a lot. But anyways, I wanted to show this preset off specifically because I am using Bic arrows and I do have a Blood Reaver. This is for a quote-unquote higher in rage setup. My lower in rage would just be a Ripper Demon, and I'd be using full arrows instead. And full arrows, rotations are going to be the same. Other ideas are going to be the same. It's just you're getting 15% more damage when using a bow. And as far as a bow is concerned, I'm choosing a physical SGB. But without further ado, make sure everything's bound. And so far, oh, forgot to bind the bruise. Even though I usually try and no food here, I usually never use food at this boss. But I have it there just in case I get unlucky with a minion spawn or something like that. And just double checking, triple checking. Everything looks good. I am on a streak right now that's, you know, just kind of proof of doing the boss and whatnot. Now I usually like to go for a Hydrix Gricko there before, or for the beginning, just to try and get some extra adren. And there, got a DPS check first, so I made a mistake there. Usually I try not to use Bic arrows on the arms, just because I feel it's kind of a waste. I try to use my crossbows there. And the reason Blood Reaver works so well here is for every bit of healing you do, all of those hits that Blood Reaver does has a chance to proc a poison hit. So with Bic arrows building up poison hits, once this thing starts to get going full tilt, you'll see it hitting 4,000 or 5,000 hits, and then Blood Reaver will just cause a bunch of them to spam. So with Weapon Poison, Triple Plus, and Cinders, that's one thing I forgot to bind was my dual wield after Bladed Dive. Oh well. But anyways, it really churns out some damage once you get the stacks going, and it's every single hit will put a stack on. So You're using your rapid fires and your Gricos accordingly, then stacks do build up rather quickly. So here, I'm just going to go for another Hydrix proc. Didn't get one, but it's not too big of a deal. Get an SGB going. And now we're into a focus, so we just pray flick per usual. Just snap off. We're not going to get 2 rapids in this rotation, just because Adrenaline was not kind, but... I like to save Limitless also for cannon, just in case I do something dumb, like hit Debo or something. And we're going right into a cannon or something like that. But other than that, I usually just either an APOT DS and hope for a, and not really need a Gricko or a Hydrix Gricko, but... And these minions are being kind of obnoxious here. We're all dead, so we can collect these little orbs, get the free hits. But did I lose my... Okay, I didn't lose my stacks. I thought I did for a second because they were taking too long. Also, rapid fire. Maybe another Gricko. Alright, instead, TC back on target. And we have an APOT for this DS. Go ahead and use it. But Vamp Aura counts as a separate hit that goes out from the Reaver as well as your Soul Split healing. And if you're using melee, you can also use Vamp Scrim, and that puts a lot of damage out from a Blood Reaver. There's quite a hilarious clip that Luca did a little while ago when testing Bic Arrows at Ambassador and used, was it the Laniakia Spear? And Ambassador got melted just from threshold use. It was quite entertaining. Go ahead and go for a dead shot. I see some of these poison hits are almost doing 3k, and we're not even at full stack yet. It's oh, there's a 5k poison hit. Like, poison damage really adds up here. Go ahead and Devotion, just for a cannon. Hit the SGB. Got minions, so I'm just gonna go ahead and Debo, just because I want them dead. We're close to the end of the kill, so it doesn't matter too much about conserving adrenaline. Excuse me. Toss another rapid on. These poison hits really add up. Oh, 500 HP? Okay. Got back-to-back minions. Slightly unlucky, but, you know, happens to the best of us. And if you want a more, like, in-depth guide of what I was doing with the special attacks, the budget preset, it's honestly a pretty interesting watch. I'm surprised at what that budget preset can do. But I do talk a little bit more about the mechanics specifically in that example. However, that's pretty much a normal kill with this preset. Doing commentary, I wasn't able to focus as much on the kill itself, and so time's a little bit slower, but earlier in testing, I was doing about 340 to 350 as a time, or anywhere from 1100 to 11 to whatever my current enrage is. I think it's 1200. Just for fun. Okay, got some coins. But this boss, as you can see, makes a lot of GP. It's worthwhile. The swords are anywhere from 1.3 to 1.6, so if you streak far, you can get quite a lot of Nihilus, and so it's just a matter of just basically getting frozen cores at that point. So anyways, I'll go ahead and now move into a final thoughts segment, and we'll go ahead and wrap up this video. Alright, just doing a recap of this video. Basically, the gear doesn't matter a whole lot as far as range, as long as you got some decent weapons and decent armor and some abilities and whatnot. You can do this boss, and honestly, there's a very low barrier of entry at Glacor, even in hard mode. And honestly, it's really nice with this boss being such a low barrier to entry and a potential chance it drops. It allows you to really start at any level of skill and improve yourself further. And it's honestly one of my favorite bosses, definitely in the top 3 as far as personal choice in bosses is concerned. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. But with range, you can do a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of freedom here, and with different weapon specs and whatnot, you can kind of make your own rotations, kind of pick and choose when to start or where to start Death Swiftness and what to do in between, or maybe go for like an ECB or rotation or something. There's a lot of freedom of choice with this boss, and that's what I really enjoy about it. So, as you could tell from the live examples, the budget preset does really well. I was surprised at how well it does. We even managed a no food kill on it, which is kind of like a personal standard of mine, as I shouldn't be using food at Glacor. Should just be using rotations and kind of sending it with damage, and that's about it. And it does really well, even at like 1200 plus in rage, and I could see it going even further, so it's just kind of proof in the pudding that gear doesn't really matter too much at most bosses, but specifically with Glacor, it doesn't matter a whole lot. And obviously the other preset I have, testing out the new arrows and whatnot, that's what I've been doing recently. Beforehand, I would just Hydrix camp this boss, but now that the new arrows are out, I really enjoyed playing with them. And the Blood Reaver setup is always really fun for high-end rage, especially when you get to like the 1500% and above, where there's a lot of HP you're having to deal with on the boss. Those poison hits add up really fast, and the synergizing how it synergizes with Blood Reaver it makes it even more fun to do. And for low in rage, just full arrows instead of Bic arrows, because you can't really build up the stacks in time. And that's about it. Relics are the same with other bosses and other things of the sort. That's pretty much about it. So let's go ahead and roll that outro. Ladies, gentlemen, and I did not forget about you, Chaotic Crossbows. Thank you very much for watching. Greatly appreciate the viewership. As always, have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, nighttime, whatever it is, wherever you are, and I will see you next time for the next guide. Peace.